After this video, you will never look at a woman the same way again. Because what you think you know about them is merely a made-up reflection.
A fogged mirror that hides what truly happens behind the smile, behind the caress, behind the sweet word that seems harmless. You have lived your whole life believing that danger comes head-on, that the enemy always shows himself with a sword raised high. But here lies the trap. The deadliest blow is not delivered with a knife, but with the mind. And no one knows how to use the mind like they do. Do you think I'm exaggerating? Then tell me, why do you remember so vividly the first time a woman betrayed you, while the rest of your pains have already faded from memory? The disturbing part is that you almost never see it coming. You are seduced by the calm, the soft voice, the sense of refuge you believe you've found. And right there, in the moment you let your guard down, the real game begins. Because every word can be a calculated move, every gesture a subtle trap, every tear an invisible weapon. And when you finally realize it, it's too late. Your trust has become the rope she herself placed around your neck. Machiavelli warned of it in different ways, but the principle is always the same. Blind trust is man's greatest weakness, and the woman who knows this holds a frightening power. What is most unsettling is how they manipulate time. They don't strike immediately. They don't show all their cards. No, first they plant seeds. They make you believe everything is genuine, that what you see is what it is. Meanwhile, they watch, they wait, they study your cracks. And when they know your fears, when they already know what word will open your deepest wound, they act with surgical precision. They call it intuition, but in reality, it's strategy. Female intuition isn't magic. It's constant reading, silent collection of emotional data that you don't even realize you're giving away. The terrible thing is that you cooperate in your own downfall, because when you feel that someone truly listens to you, you lower your defenses. You share secrets, you confess doubts, you hand over your vulnerability wrapped like a gift. And that gift can become a dagger. You don't notice it at first, because it moves in the shadows of subtlety. But when the blade enters, there is no turning back. That's when you understand that misplaced trust is the costliest mistake a man can make. And the worst part is that, in most cases, the fault is not hers. It's yours. Has it happened to you? You're in a room, talking, and suddenly you feel a chill with no explanation. As if something invisible were taking notes on you, dissecting your soul without you perceiving it. That chill has a name. It's the recognition that you control nothing, that someone else is inside your head, rearranging your logic, playing with your emotions. And do you know what's more disturbing? That many times you accept it. You even enjoy it. Because there is a strange pleasure in surrendering to someone who seems to understand you. That is the paradox. You feel alive while you are being consumed. Look closely. When a man betrays, he does it clumsily, with noise, with traces, with obvious signs. But when a woman betrays, she does it in silence. She does it so flawlessly that you even end up justifying her, blaming yourself. And that is where the brilliance of her game lies. Because while you scream inside, she walks calmly, as if nothing had happened, as if the entire storm were only in your head. And you start doubting yourself. That is the true poison. Doubt. Imagine this. You close your eyes and remember all the promises once made to you. Think of that phrase that seemed eternal. I will never fail you. How long did that eternity last? Exactly until the day you stopped being useful. Because here lies the brutal truth. There are no eternal promises, only temporary interests. And when you stop being the piece that adds something to her board, the door of replacement opens. Nobody talks about this, because truth hurts more than lies. But those who understand the psychology behind female affections know that nothing is coincidence. Everything has a purpose. If you still think I'm exaggerating, remember this. There is no worse enemy than the one who knows your most intimate fears. A stranger can hurt you with a blow, but the one who knows you can destroy you without lifting a finger. And that is what makes blindly trusting a woman so terrifying. She knows exactly where to let you fall, so you will never rise the same again. And now tell me, are you sure that the woman you trust today isn't simply waiting for the perfect moment to show you that, in this game, you never had the pieces under control? And here is where something even more disturbing comes into play: the illusion of control. You believe it is you who makes the decisions, that you move forward because you choose, that the relationship, the trust, the words, and the agreements depend on your will. But what you don't notice is that many times you are nothing more than a pawn on a carefully designed board. What is fascinating is how that illusion is built. A woman who masters the art of manipulation doesn't order you, doesn't force you, doesn't need to raise her voice. She makes you believe that what you do is your choice, when in reality she has placed the pieces in such a way that any move you make benefits her. That is the power of the invisible. You never question it because it seems to come from you. Do you know what the most dangerous move is? The one hidden behind feigned vulnerability. She knows perfectly when to appear fragile, when to cry, when to soften her voice at the exact moment to trigger your protective instinct. And once that instinct is lit, you are trapped. Because the man who feels the need to save someone stops saving himself. That is where the true captivity begins. Not in iron chains, but in emotional chains. The strongest prison has no bars. It has sweet words. There's a detail few recognize: selective memory. A woman who knows the game well doesn't need to convince you of everything. She only needs to plant strategic memories. She chooses which moments to intensify, which to dramatize, and which to erase from the map. She makes you live scenes you will never forget, and trains you, without you knowing it, to obey those memories. Because what really rules you is not what is happening, but what she made you record as absolute truth. And that truth, even if it isn't real, becomes the compass of your decisions. Do you realize the danger? You are not reacting to the present, but to the past someone else designed for you. The true masterstroke is when she makes you doubt your own judgment. When you reach the point of asking yourself whether you really saw what you saw, felt what you felt, remembered what you remembered. This psychological distortion has a name: gaslighting. And the cruelest thing is that it doesn't feel like an attack. It feels like a loving correction, like a, "You're wrong. Let me show you the truth." But that truth is only a convenient version, manufactured so that you depend more and more on her vision of things. The uncomfortable question is, how much of you is truly yourself, and how much is a reflection of the narrative imposed on you? The most chilling part is that you don't need to fall into an obvious, toxic relationship to live this. Sometimes it happens in the smallest details, in seemingly innocent phrases, in everyday decisions. The danger is not the big betrayal that comes suddenly, but the invisible wear that accumulates little by little until you no longer recognize who you are. Because when someone controls your trust, they control your identity. And when you lose your identity, there is no war to win. You are defeated without realizing it. Here appears another brutal truth: social masks. Many times you're not the only one in the game, because while you believe the relationship is an intimate space between two people, she is already moving her pieces in other arenas. Machiavelli made it clear: power is not maintained with sincerity, but with perception. And in the female mind, perception is a weapon as lethal as any dagger. The question is, what version of you is she showing to the world while smiling with you in private? That duality is what makes men tremble when they finally discover it. And there is something even more unsettling. Projection. Many times what she accuses you of, what she throws at you as reproach, what she uses to make you feel guilty, is nothing but her own reflection. She points out your supposed betrayals while hiding her own, makes you carry burdens that aren't yours, and little by little you come to believe that you are the problem. That is the final trap. When you accept guilt that doesn't belong to you, you surrender the last weapon you had left, your mental clarity. Now think calmly. How many times in your life have you justified behaviors that you would never have tolerated in anyone else? How many times have you said, "But I love her, it's different," while swallowing poison disguised as affection? That is the irrefutable proof that misplaced trust not only destroys your present, it also buries your judgment, your strength, and your dignity. And when you reach that point, you are no longer the owner of yourself. You are an actor in a play you never wrote. So I ask you, do you really want to keep believing you understand what goes on in her mind? Or would you rather accept that what you fear most is discovering that, in this game, she has always been 3 steps ahead? And the curious thing is that the more you try to decipher her game, the more trapped you become. Because man's fatal mistake is to think that logic is enough to understand female psychology. It's not about logic, it's about layers, masks, symbols. She doesn't move in the straight line of the rational, but in the infinite circles of the emotional. While you search for clear explanations, she has already woven a net that cannot be seen. A net that doesn't catch with force, but with softness, with subtlety, with the art of making you believe you are free, when in reality, you are already caged. Here comes another dark terrain. Expectation. They don't just manipulate what you do, they manipulate what you imagine. They project possible futures, show you images of what could be, and you, naive, buy them as certainties. But those futures are not promises, they are bait. They hook you with the idea of a perfect tomorrow so that you submit today. That is the most masterful move. No one needs chains when the prisoner locks himself up. And the most striking part is how they use silence. You think power lies in words, in explanation, in speech? But no. Female silence can be sharper than any scream. Because in that silence, you project your fear, your insecurity, your need for approval. And the more you talk, the more power you hand over. In your anxiety to fill the void, you reveal secrets, justify your actions, expose your weak points, and she, meanwhile, just watches, collects information, and remains silent. Do you see? Silence is not absence, it is dominance. Another aspect few admit is theatricality. A woman who knows how to handle psychology doesn't just talk to you, she performs a play. She changes her tone, shifts her gaze, alters her gestures depending on what she needs to achieve. You think you're facing the same person, but in reality you're facing different characters within the same body. And each character has a function. The victim, the confidant, the seductress, the distant one. You think you choose how to respond, but in reality she chose first who she was going to be with you. Do you want a brutal example? The use of doubt as a weapon. When she wants, she can plant in you the feeling that you're not enough, that something is missing, that you're failing in some invisible way. And that doubt, even without real basis, becomes an obsession. You start competing against ghosts, fighting against impossible expectations. And while you wear yourself out trying to prove your worth, she keeps control with a simple gesture, like someone pulling a puppet's strings. That is the greatness of the psychological game. The one in control never tires. The one who obeys does. The most terrifying thing is the coldness with which they can execute these moves. Not because they don't feel, but because they know how to separate feeling from strategy. They can cry while advancing, smile while manipulating, hug you while thinking about how to leave without you noticing. And now that we've made it this far, before we continue, I want to present the following to you. Our book, The Formula of Awakening, is now available. Do you feel like there's something inside you that wants to awaken, but you don't know where to start? Then I invite you to transform your way of thinking, and with it, your way of living. Discover who you can become. Start today. The link to get the ebook is in the first pinned comment of this video. Grab your copy now at a great price. With that said, let's continue with the video. And that mixture confuses, because the male mind seeks coherence, but the mind of a woman trained in the art of power doesn't need to be coherent. It only needs to be effective. And there is something that goes even further: the construction of myths. A woman can turn a simple detail into a legend inside your head. A gesture, a word, a glance that seems insignificant. And suddenly you carry it engraved as if it were an eternal symbol. She will use it to remind you of what supposedly binds her to you, or of what you supposedly owe her. That myth is untouchable, because it no longer exists in the present. It exists in your memory, and you will defend it even if it doesn't exist in reality. That is the true prison, when you protect chains that you yourself believe are treasures. Now tell me, isn't it chilling to think that perhaps many of the most important decisions in your life weren't really made by you? That the twists in your story may have been dictated by smiles, silences, or gestures that seemed harmless? Because in the end, the lesson no one wants to hear is this: the most dangerous power is not the one that shouts, but the one that whispers. And in that whisper, many times, hides the plan that will change everything without you seeing it coming. And at this point, there's something you must engrave in your mind. The real trap isn't in them, it's in you. Because the more afraid you are to accept this reality, the easier it will be for you to fall into it again and again. It's not about hating. It's not about distrusting all women. It's about waking up, seeing the invisible, reading between the lines, training the mind not to hand over your power in exchange for a smile. The deadliest enemy never presents himself as an enemy, and trust, when given without filter, is the gateway to disaster. The key is to understand something painful. It's not betrayal that destroys the most. It's your inability to see it coming. Because betrayal itself is a blow, but naivety is an eternal chain. The man who learns to observe, who is not carried away by the mask or the sweet voice, begins to see the hidden patterns. And when you see the patterns, you are no longer prey, you become a player. That is the difference between those who fall and those who dominate the game. And I want you to think about this. Maybe right now there are details you overlooked, silences that seemed harmless, looks you didn't know how to read. Were they really as innocent as you thought? Maybe not. Maybe you were already inside the game and never noticed. That is the reflection I want to leave you. Every time you trust, make sure you're not handing over the knife with which they could hurt you. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you is awakening, something that refuses to remain blind. And that is the first step. Now I want you to use it. Subscribe, because what's coming will take you even further, much deeper than you imagine. And write in the comments this phrase: silence also speaks. I want to see how many of you are capable of understanding the magnitude of those words. And here I'll say goodbye. But not in the way you expect. Not with a traditional goodbye, not with a kind closure. I leave you with a question you won't be able to get out of your head tonight. Are you sure that the woman you trust right now isn't just playing a role she hasn't revealed yet? See you in the shadows.